The forbidden border Lyra Venn had spent 6 years working at the Galactic Cartography Institute, and in all that time, she had never questioned the maps. Why would she? The star charts were precise, updated regularly, and used by every species in the known galaxy. Her job was simple: verify trade routes, update planetary classifications, and maintain the accuracy of navigational databases that kept billions of beings moving safely through space. But on a cold morning in the administrative quarter of Nexus Prime, Lyra stumbled upon something that didn't make sense. She was reviewing outdated survey data from the Outer Rim territories, preparing to archive files that were over 2 centuries old. The task was mind-numbing, the kind of work assigned to junior cartographers who needed to prove their attention to detail. Lyra didn't mind. She enjoyed the quiet precision of the work, the satisfaction of organizing chaos into neat, logical systems. Then she opened file designation AR7749, and everything changed. The file contained survey maps from 287 years ago, back when the Galactic Institute was first establishing standardized navigation protocols. Lyra overlaid the ancient maps onto current star charts, expecting to see minor differences. A few shifted asteroids, updated planet classifications, the usual changes that came with improved sensor technology. Instead, she found an impossibility. On the old map, there was a region marked as uncharted territory, survey pending. It covered approximately 40 star systems, a modest area awaiting proper exploration. But on the current map, that same region had expanded into a massive void labeled simply Zone Null, no entry. The void now encompassed nearly 4,000 star systems. Lyra checked her overlay coordinates 3 times. She ran diagnostic tests on both datasets. She even pulled up intermediate maps from various decades, watching as the restricted zone grew larger with each update. It wasn't an error. The maps were intentionally showing an ever-expanding area of space that was completely off-limits. And at the center of Zone Null, marked with the smallest possible notation, was a single word: human. Lyra knew about humans, of course. Everyone did. They were members of the Galactic Institute, though barely. They had joined approximately 200 years ago, maintaining a small diplomatic presence but otherwise keeping to themselves. They were quiet, unremarkable, and rarely participated in galactic affairs. Most species forgot they existed, so why did they control 4,000 star systems? According to every database Lyra could access, humanity had colonized exactly 37 worlds. Their population was estimated at 12 billion, a respectable number but nothing extraordinary. Their military fleet consisted of perhaps 100 vessels, all of which stayed well within their declared borders. They were, by every measurable standard, a minor civilization. Yet their exclusion zone covered more space than the next 20 largest empires combined. Lyra spent the next 3 days searching for explanations. She combed through trade records, diplomatic archives, and military reports. She found nothing. No treaties explaining the zone's size, no historical records justifying its existence, no surveys or resource assessments of the thousands of star systems humans supposedly controlled but clearly didn't occupy. It was as if someone had drawn an enormous circle on the Galactic map and declared it forbidden, and everyone had simply accepted it without question. On the 4th day, Lyra made a mistake. She asked about it publicly. During the weekly staff meeting, when Director Kess asked if anyone had concerns to raise, Lyra spoke up. "I've been reviewing historical survey data, and I noticed some inconsistencies regarding Zone Null. The human exclusion zone has expanded significantly over the past 2 centuries, but I can't find any documentation explaining why. Could someone clarify the protocols governing that region?" The room went silent. Director Kess, a normally jovial Threnian with 6 arms and a booming laugh, stared at Lyra with an expression she had never seen before. His skin paled from its usual deep purple to an ashen gray. Around the table, senior cartographers exchanged glances that Lyra couldn't interpret. Worry, fear, perhaps anger. "That region is classified," Kess said quietly. "It requires clearance level 8 to access related files. This meeting is adjourned." Everyone left quickly. No one looked at Lyra. She sat alone in the conference room, her heart's pounding. In 6 years of employment, she had never seen Kess dismiss a meeting early. She had never heard him use that tone. Cold, clipped, almost frightened. That night Lyra couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the map, about the impossible void at its center, about the way her colleagues had reacted. She decided to dig deeper, but carefully. If Zone Null was classified, she would need to be subtle about her investigation. She started with public records, news archives, historical databases, academic papers, anything that might mention humans or their territory without triggering security alerts. What she found was strange. There were references to humanity scattered throughout galactic history, but they were inconsistent, sometimes contradictory. Historical text mentioned humans as a peaceful agrarian species discovered 203 years ago. Another referred to them as ancient allies of the Galactic Institute. A third, published only 50 years ago, described humanity as a reclusive civilization that prefers minimal contact with other species. None of the sources agreed on basic facts: when humans joined the Institute, where they came from, or even how many worlds they controlled. It was as if history itself couldn't decide what truth to tell about humanity. Lyra found something else that disturbed her. Over the past 2 centuries, 17 exploration vessels had filed flight plans that would take them near Zone Null's borders. None of those vessels had ever returned. There were no distress signals, no debris fields, no emergency transmissions. The ships had simply vanished the moment they crossed into the restricted zone. 17 ships. 17 crews, all gone, and no one seemed to care. There were no investigations, no memorial services, no diplomatic incidents. The disappearances were noted in the records with clinical detachment. Vessel failed to report. Presumed lost in transit, Lyra was terrified, but she couldn't stop. The mystery had consumed her. She began spending her evenings in the Institute's deep archives, searching through files that hadn't been accessed in decades. She requisitioned old navigation logs, sensor recordings, and communications transcripts, anything that might hold a clue. 2 weeks into her investigation, she found something that changed everything. It was a partial transmission, recorded 341 years ago by a science vessel called the Wandering Eye. The ship had been studying stellar phenomena near what would later become the edge of Zone Null. The transmission was fragmentary, corrupted by age and poor storage, but Lyra managed to reconstruct enough to understand what the crew had witnessed. The recording began with routine observations, stellar classifications, gravitational measurements, standard scientific work. Then suddenly the sensor operator's voice became urgent. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures. Multiple sources, thousands of them, all activating simultaneously. They're everywhere. They weren't there a moment ago, and now they're surrounding us." The captain's response was calm. "Identify the sources." "Are they vessels?" I don't know, sir. They're not matching any known ship configuration. They're too small to be manned craft, but they're moving with coordinated intelligence. They're positioning themselves in a perfect sphere around our location." There was a pause, then a new voice, the communications officer. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's in standard galactic language, but the encryption is... I've never seen anything like it. It's using protocols that shouldn't exist yet. Put it through." The voice that came through the recording was human. It was polite, almost apologetic. "Science vessel Wandering Eye, you have entered a restricted zone. This territory is protected by ancient treaty. You must reverse course immediately. You will not be warned again." The captain of the Wandering Eye responded with confusion. "Restricted zone? There are no registered claims in this region. Please identify yourself and provide legal documentation for your territorial claim." The human voice replied, "Documentation is not required. This zone is protected by treaties older than your civilization. You have 60 seconds to begin reversing course." "This is absurd. We're conducting legitimate scientific research in unclaimed space. We're not leaving until..." The transmission ended abruptly. Lyra played it 3 more times, her hands shaking. The date on the recording was 341 years ago, but according to every official record, humanity hadn't made first contact with the Galactic Institute until 203 years ago. How could humans have been enforcing territorial boundaries 138 years before they supposedly joined galactic civilization? The recording raised more questions than it answered, but it confirmed one thing: the official history was a lie. Humanity had been in space, active and powerful, for far longer than anyone admitted. and something about their presence was so concerning that the truth had been systematically erased from public records. Lyra needed to talk to someone who knew the real history. Someone old enough to remember events before the records were sanitized. She thought of Kess, but his reaction at the staff meeting told her he wouldn't help. She needed someone outside the official hierarchy, someone who dealt with information the Institute preferred to keep buried. She thought of Varric. Varric. Thule was a legend among junior cartographers, an archivist who had worked at the Institute for over 90 years before being forced into retirement. The official story was that he had reached mandatory retirement age, but rumors suggested something else. People said Varric had been asking uncomfortable questions, pursuing research into classified territories, and refusing to follow orders to destroy certain historical records. Lyra had never met him, but she knew where he lived. Most retired Institute employees stayed on Nexus Prime, enjoying comfortable pensions and access to academic resources. Varric had moved to the outskirts of the city, to a district known for its privacy and its residents' general distrust of authority. She found his address and went to his apartment unannounced. It was a risk. Varric might refuse to see her, or worse, he might report her unauthorized investigation to Institute security. But Lyra had come too far to turn back now. The apartment building was old, built in an architectural style that predated modern construction standards. Lyra climbed 5 flights of stairs before reaching Varric's door. She knocked 3 times and waited. The door opened to reveal an ancient Drayan male, his scales dulled by age, his 4 eyes sharp with intelligence and suspicion. "You're from the Institute," he said. It wasn't a question. "My name is Lyra Venn. I'm a junior cartographer and I need to ask you about Zone Null." Varric stared at her for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in quickly. Don't let anyone see you entering." The silent guardian's Varric's apartment was cluttered with data storage devices, old star charts and stacks of physical documents, an archivist's sanctuary frozen in time. The walls were covered with maps, some so ancient that Lyra didn't recognize the cartographic symbols. One map in particular caught her attention. A massive chart of the galaxy with a red circle drawn around a region she immediately recognized as Zone Null. "Sit down," Varric said, gesturing to a worn chair. "And tell me exactly what you've discovered." Lyra explained everything, the inconsistent maps, the missing ships, the transmission from the wandering eye. As she spoke, Varric's expression shifted from suspicion to something resembling sadness. When she finished, he was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he moved to a locked cabinet and retrieved a small data crystal. "What I'm about to show you is dangerous knowledge," Varric said. "The Institute has spent centuries trying to bury this information. They've erased records, silenced witnesses, and destroyed careers to keep these secrets hidden. If you proceed, your life will change. You won't be able to forget what you learn." "I need to know the truth," Lyra said firmly. Varric inserted the crystal into a reader, and a holographic display materialized between them. It showed a star system Lyra didn't recognize, filled with thousands of vessels engaged in what appeared to be a massive battle. "This recording is over 5,000 years old," Varric began. "Long before the Galactic Institute existed, long before most current civilizations had achieved spaceflight. At that time, the dominant power in this region was an empire called the Vreth Sovereignty. The hologram shifted, showing sleek warships bearing unfamiliar markings. The Vreth were conquerors. They had subjugated 47 different species, enslaving entire worlds to fuel their expansion. They were technologically advanced, militarily superior, and absolutely ruthless. No one could stand against them. Lyra watched as the hologram displayed world after world falling to Vreth invasion forces. Then the Vreth discovered a small, primitive world on the edge of their territory, a planet called Earth. The inhabitants had just developed basic industrial technology, primitive aircraft, early computers, chemical rockets. The Vreth saw an opportunity. They needed labor for their mining colonies, and humans seemed perfect for the task. The hologram showed Earth from orbit, a blue-green jewel untouched by interstellar conflict. The Vreth sent a subjugation fleet, 300 warships, more than enough to overwhelm a pre-spaceflight civilization. They expected complete victory within weeks. Varric paused, his expression dark. The war lasted 73 years. Lyra's breath caught. 73 years? How could a primitive species resist for that long? That's the question that haunts everyone who knows this history, Varric replied. The early reports from Vreth commanders are confident, almost dismissive. Humans had no space navy, no energy weapons, no shields. They should have been conquered immediately. The hologram showed the initial Vreth assault, orbital bombardments, landing forces, occupation zones, but humans didn't surrender. They retreated underground into their oceans, into remote regions their attackers considered worthless, and they learned. Every Vreth weapon they captured, they reverse-engineered. Every tactical mistake their enemy made, they studied. Within 5 years, humans were building crude spacecraft from salvaged Vreth technology. The display shifted, showing increasingly sophisticated human vessels. Within 10 years, they had independently developed their own faster-than-light drives, not by copying Vreth technology, but by solving the problem differently. Their approach was more efficient, more elegant than anything the Vreth had created. Lyra leaned forward, transfixed. By year 20, humans had established colonies on other worlds in their solar system. By year 30, they were striking Vreth supply lines across multiple star systems. The Vreth sent reinforcements, 1,000 more ships. It didn't matter. Humans adapted faster than the Vreth could respond. The hologram now showed human fleets engaging Vreth warships with devastating effectiveness. The Vreth made a fatal mistake. Varric continued. They assumed humans would fight like other species they had conquered, with honor, with predictable tactics, with restraint. Humans did none of those things. They used psychological warfare, creating weapons designed to terrify rather than just kill. They employed tactics the Vreth considered dishonorable: ambushes, false surrenders, bioweapons tailored to Vreth physiology. Lyra felt a chill run through her body. By year 50, the Vreth were losing. By year 60, they were retreating. And in year 73, the war ended. Humanity won? Lyra asked. Not exactly, Varric said grimly. The Vreth sovereignty ceased to exist completely. Every Vreth world, every colony, every outpost, all gone. Not destroyed. Empty. The hologram showed silent cities, abandoned space stations, vessels drifting without crews. Search teams from other species investigated. They found Vreth worlds perfectly preserved. Buildings intact, technology functioning, but not a single Vreth remained. Billions of beings had simply vanished. It was as if they had been carefully removed from reality, leaving everything else untouched. Lyra's voice trembled. What did humanity do to them? No one knows, Varric admitted. Humanity never explained. When other species made contact after the war, humans were polite but firm. They claimed a large territory, what we now call Zone Null, and requested that all other civilizations respect their borders. They made it clear that any intrusion would be met with the same response the Vreth had received. And everyone just agreed? What choice did they have? Humanity had just erased the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Every species was terrified. They signed treaties immediately, granting humans whatever territory they wanted. Varric closed the holographic display and looked directly at Lyra. But here's what most people don't understand. Humanity didn't want conquest. They didn't demand tribute or submission. They just wanted to be left alone. Over the centuries, they've maintained minimal contact with the rest of the galaxy. They keep a small diplomatic presence, they honor their treaties, and they never expand beyond their declared borders. Then why does Zone Null keep growing? Lyra asked. It doesn't, Varric said. The borders haven't moved in 5,000 years. What changes is our maps. As new species join the Galactic Institute, as civilizations expand toward human space, the Institute updates the maps to show larger restricted zones. It's a warning system, making sure everyone understands where not to go. What about the ships that disappeared? Varric's expression became grim. Every vessel that crossed into Zone Null was warned. Multiple times. In multiple languages, humanity doesn't attack without warning. But if those warnings are ignored, he trailed off. They vanished just like the Vreth, Lyra finished. Exactly. No wreckage, no bodies, no evidence of violence, just gone. Humanity has perfected the art of making problems disappear. Lyra sat in silence, processing everything. Finally, she asked the question that had been building in her mind. What are they? What did humans become during that war? Varric stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights. That's the real secret the Institute protects. During the war with the Vreth, humans didn't just advance technologically. They changed fundamentally. They modified themselves, enhanced their biology, merged with their technology. By the end of the war, they were something new, something that doesn't fit into any category we have for classifying life. He turned back to Lyra. According to the few reports that exist, modern humans don't age. They don't die from disease. They can exist in multiple forms simultaneously, biological, digital, or something in between. They've mastered technologies that other species consider theoretical impossibilities. Nanotechnology that can reshape matter at will, quantum manipulation that allows them to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, and something else, something they've never explained, the ability to move things out of normal space entirely. Like what happened to the Vreth, Lyra said. Exactly. We don't know if they killed the Vreth or imprisoned them in some other dimension, or transformed them into something else. Humanity won't say, and no one dares push for answers. Lyra felt overwhelmed. Why doesn't everyone know this? Why hide the truth? Because fear is destabilizing, Varric explained. If every species in the galaxy knew the full truth about humanity's capabilities, it would create panic. Some civilizations would try to build weapons to defend against them, which would only provoke conflict. Others would try to appease humanity with tribute and submission, which humans don't want. The Institute decided that controlled ignorance was safer than widespread terror, so they maintain the lie that humans are just another minor species. Yes, and they expand zone. Null on the maps with each update, quietly reminding everyone to stay away without explaining why. Lyra stood and paced the small apartment. This is insane. We're living next to beings who could erase our entire civilization, and we're pretending they're harmless. Not harmless, Varric corrected. Peaceful. There's a difference. Humanity has the power to dominate the galaxy, but they've chosen not to use it. For 5,000 years, they've kept to themselves, honoring their isolation. That's not weakness, it's restraint. But what if they change their minds? What if they decide to expand? Varric smiled sadly. Then the galaxy ends and there's nothing anyone can do about it. But I don't think that will happen. Humanity learned something during their war with the Vreth. Something about the cost of violence, about what you lose when you become a weapon. They've spent 5 millennia trying to recover their humanity, trying to be something other than the monster survival forced them to become. He placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. Zone Null isn't a prison containing humanity. It's a sanctuary they built for themselves, a place where they can exist without threatening others, without being threatened. The galaxy's greatest mercy is that humanity wants nothing from us except distance. Lyra looked at the ancient map on Varric's wall, at the red circle marking humanity's territory. What should I do with this information? Exactly what I did, Varric said. Nothing. Return to your work. Don't ask questions about Zone Null. Don't investigate the missing ships. Accept that some mysteries exist for good reasons. The Institute will let you continue your career as long as you demonstrate that you understand the boundaries. And if I can't accept that? Varric's expression was serious. Then you'll end up like me, forced out, isolated, spending your retirement guarding secrets that no one wants to hear. The truth about humanity isn't liberating, Lyra. It's a burden. Choose carefully whether you want to carry it. Lyra left Varric's apartment as night settled over Nexus Prime. She walked through the quiet streets, her mind churning with everything she had learned. Above her, stars glittered in the darkness. Thousands of points of light, each representing systems and worlds and civilizations going about their lives, unaware of the ancient power that dwelt in the darkness between them. She thought about the maps in her office, about the blank space at their center, about the simple notation that warned travelers away from humanity's borders. She understood now that the emptiness on those maps wasn't an absence of information. It was a deliberate choice, a representation of the galaxy's collective decision to leave some questions unasked. By the time Lyra reached her apartment, she had made her decision. The next morning, she returned to work. Director Kess watched her carefully as she took her seat, his multiple eyes searching for signs of continued rebellion. Lyra met his gaze calmly and gave a small nod of understanding. She would not investigate Zone Null further. She would update the maps as instructed, maintaining the boundaries that kept civilization safe. She would keep humanity secret, adding her silence to the thousands who had guarded the truth before her. Because some boundaries exist not to contain monsters, but to protect everyone from the terrible knowledge of what monsters can become when survival demands it. And in the darkness of Zone Null, humanity remained, powerful beyond measure, isolated by choice, waiting patiently for the day when they might finally remember what it meant to be human again. The galaxy's greatest fortune was that they were willing to wait.